Alright, I've got some tools here for the radio. So first of all, I've got the plug, what we're going to put in here. Here's my plug here. And I'm going to strip the wire. I'm going to snip the wires. Got a rag here. I really want to put that rag down first. I'm going to snip all the wires off. Alright, once I do that, we'll move on to the next step. Alright, now we're just going to pull the ends off them. Just use your finger to all the ones I've cut, just to take the coating off them. And what I'll do is I'll just throw them on the floor. And there's one here, it's a little bit short, this blue one. I'll just take a bit more off that. And I'm going to do the exact same to this end, and when I do that, we'll be on the next step. Alright, now I've got all them wires off. Now I've got some of these connectors here, because what we want to do is solder this. I tell you, I've got that much shit everywhere in the car. I'm just going to get some heat shrink out. So just bear with me. Once I get I'm going to need how many? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. 12 bits of heat shrink out, and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright, I've got this heat shrink tube now. So obviously this is, you know, the longest end. So what we need to do is we need to thread each one of these tubes down this wire. So we have to undo all these, I'll untwist all these wires. Just put them on there like that. And I'm going to take them all the way down the bottom, and once I've done all these 12 of them, we'll move on to the next step of putting the radio in, the radio plug in the car. Alright, now we've got all the heat shrink on, I've got it all pulled down the wire. I've got this this protective case, and not that one, where is it? It's on here. And what I was trying to do, but I don't think we'll be able to use this. I might be able to use a little bit of it on the other end. I might just cut it off. And what I've done with my bloody scissors. That's probably what fell down on the... Alright, now I've got my pair of scissors here. After all that stuff around, I had to go and search for this, for the scissors. And I don't even know why. I mean, things about sticking any of this garbage back on here. I think I'm just going to wrap the wires with some thing I'm not even going to worry about. That's just going to make it even harder. Alright, so because we're going to solder these, we've got 3 red wires here. So if we've got 3 red wires, one's got 2 on it. This one's got 2. I want to make sure I've got a real nice, good twist covering the full wire. So what I'll do is just twist them like that. Alright, That's one wire done. Now, got the red there. These have just got red with a silver stripe. To me, they're the same coloured wire and everything. So it must be just, they're no different. The red. Just untwirl all that garbage. And what I'll do is this is my first wire. What I've done, I'm going to do this exactly the same to the rest of these 12 wires. And when I've done that, I'm going to get the solder out. I'm not going to bring this in because this is just going to be boring filming this, twisting these all around. And I'll bring some solder and I'll heat it up and I'll put some solder on here and we'll solder that and I'll put some heat shrink around it and they'll be done. And when I'm ready to do the solder, we'll do that in the next step. Alright, I've got my soldering iron hooked up. I've got to be very careful here because of it's really hot. I'll pull that rag out from behind it. This is I've got a leather welding apron. Where's my fox cord? Just trying to film it, and I've got all this stuff I'm holding in my hand too. To make it a lot easier, I think I'm going to cut this solder off. It's automotive solder too. I think I'm going to cut the solder off. Hold it in my hand, the wire, because I've got to be careful what I actually do with the soldering iron. I don't go burn other stuff. Alright, that's the first joint done. And I don't want to go breathing that stuff in either at the same time. So, you know what I mean? So I've got to hold the door open. And I'm juggling multiple tasks at once. So all I'm doing is I'm getting a bit of paste, just putting on the wire. What I think I'll do is I'll just get my cutters, hold it down like that, the wire what I've already done, and I can move on to the next one. Just got to be careful, I don't want to go melting nothing. And by putting the solder, and I don't want to go melting my camera either. So I've got the soldering iron sitting on my lap real careful, and I'm just going through them, really being very careful what I do here. Got a little bit of solder on the soldering iron. What can I do with that? Just stick it there. I want to keep the tip very clean too. And yeah, that's how I'm soldering the wires together. And when I've finished doing all this, I'll show you the part, how I heat shrink them and that. I just got to be real careful because I don't want to go burning up, and I'll show you the 3 wires. And once I've finished doing all these, we'll put the heat shrink on and we'll do it up. It's just that I've got it all balancing on my lap here. I've got it all balancing on my leg as well as the rug, and I just got to be careful because if this touches something like the glove box accidentally, it's going to melt into it and it'll put a hole. It's the same as if I'm not careful with the solder. If it drips, that's why I've got my level welding apron here. And it's a very tedious process, this, and you've got to be very careful. Otherwise, you know, anything you touch, you'll melt. Hopefully you can see that up to the last 2 wires. Sorry about my arm in the way. What you actually do is, what I'm putting that stuff on there, if you're trying to work out what I'm doing there, is it's actually oh shit, that holder's hot. It's solder paste. The door wide open, get them fumes in. And what this actually does, this solder paste, is it makes the solder adhere to the wires on there. I've got the last one to do, and it actually, when you hear it sizzling, it's actually drawing that paste through the wire. Alright, we're done. Let's turn this off. I'll sit that there for a minute. I'm going to sit this soldering iron out in the ground. Hold it with both hands. So we can only use a small amount of wire. They come in here. It's actually automotive soldering. Now, if you can see that, automotive electrical parts. It's resin cord solder, 1.6 mil. It is what I've been using for that. This is the paste that you see me wiping on my finger. Just adheres it, makes it draw better through it. This is what it is, soldering paste. Just makes it adheres better. That's what I found with it, because some wires and that, they can be quite touchy. Alright, we've got the wires soldered. They all look like they're nice and neatly done. And now we've got our heat shrink that we pull up over the solder. So we slide that past the solder, and I'll get a torch and we'll shrink them down. Alright, now this part here, we've got to be very careful because we've got the joint and we've got to what we want to do is keep it on low heat. We want to shrink that heat shrink down, keep it away from anything, don't go burning nothing in your vehicle, be very careful, and make sure you got a level welding apron whenever you're stuffing around with stuff like this in your vehicle. You don't go damaging anything. What I think I'll do is I'll pull all these up, just to get them all in there, because I'm going to have the heat around the same area. A little bit of solder here, a little bit of a tight fit. That's the solder joint, what I've done. So make sure you get them as neat as possible, and also make sure you get the solder to draw through. Don't go heating them up from the top. And keep the mini torch away from anything that's hot too, especially when you're doing this. And pay attention to the other wires wherever you're using it, because you will melt them. You will melt other wiring like next to it. And obviously once you've got this on here, and if you melt wires and that, you have to put some tape on it. A bit of a tight fit in that one. And I did get one piece of solder that come off the wiring too. Like I had this welding apron in position, because it saved me doing any damage. If that would have slipped off, if I didn't have that apron there, it would have burnt into the dash. Not the dash, I mean into the console. And when I do this, I'm trying to keep the actual little torch here to the lowest setting as possible, because we don't want that to heat up. I've got a little sharp bit there, and I've got my scissors here. There's a tiny little bit of sharp solder on the side of the wire here. Just, you can cut it off, cut any little edge off of the wire carefully, and you can use a pair of pliers if you want to do that. That's just me dog in the background. If you hear that bar, he's trying to boss me around a bit. He's always so hands-on. He wants to always help as much as he can. Whoops. Juggling the little torch around then. That wasn't very good. The worst thing I find is when you get vehicles off people, is that when they make a mess of the wiring and stuff like this, you're spending so much time fixing all this. They're all in properly. They're all soldered. I'm going to have to get some tape and stuff around them. thought I'd just show you what I did. Just give you a look. I put the harness in some stretchy plastic shielding. I carefully lifted it back in here, and I'm just going to put some screws on it. Once I get some screws in these 4 points, which had no screws, because you know naturally people just take shit out and just throw it all on the ground. I couldn't leave you with not showing us me reassembling it. I thought I'd better include that. Otherwise that would have sucked. Alright, got the screws in there. I like to show you the finish, me finishing it off, otherwise, you know what I mean? It wouldn't be right otherwise. Alright, we've got to clip this plug back in. This is for the hazard lights, that one, and then just get it all on the dash, line it up, that's it. We have installed the radio properly. That's in there. Obviously I've got no power hooked up at the moment, so we can't turn this stuff on. I gather that button there was for the air conditioner. AC, that must be the demisters. That circulate in the vehicle, that's a demister. Here's the AC here. Alright. I feel like they work. Pretty expensive, $100 for a shit heap radio just to put back in the car after someone takes one out. Like I reckon they would have had probably a GPS version or some head unit in there.